I wasn't supposed to be there. At least, that's what the invitation made clear. No, we hope you'll join us. No, it would mean the world. Just a cardstock rectangle with my name misspelled. Mrs. S. Aldrich, and the time and place of my only child's wedding. I came anyway. The rehearsal dinner was held in one of those event barns with chandeliers hanging from old wooden beams and wine served in jam jars to make it all feel rustic and ironic. I sat 2 seats from the end of the table where the catering trays clinked louder than the conversation. No one offered to move closer. Marley stood near the center, perfectly backlit by a row of Edison bulbs. She wore pale pink and a smirk. When she raised her glass to make a toast, the room went still. "I just want to say," she began, "how grateful I am to everyone who helped us get here, especially my mom, who handled all the planning, and of course to Eli's mom." She turned slightly, not enough to meet my eye. "She used to be a doctor or something, right?" Laughter broke like glass on concrete, sharp, scattered. I heard someone mutter, "Was she?" I didn't move. Eli said nothing. Not a smile, not a shift, not even the faintest gesture in my direction. He just looked at his plate, like the moment hadn't touched him. I took a slow sip of water and stared at the condensation on the glass. Marley kept talking, something about floral arrangements and signature cocktails, but I wasn't listening. I was counting. Every breath I'd ever held for this boy, every night I stayed awake to keep him safe, every bill I paid, every scar I carried that his name stitched into. And here I was, a stranger at my own son's wedding. I found my name, if you could call it that, at the table closest to the catering door. S. Aldrich, printed in lowercase thin script like an afterthought. No title, no recognition, just 5 letters and a period. The servers bustled behind me, trays clattering, silverware chiming like wind chimes on a bad day. Every time someone passed, a gust of kitchen air grazed my back. Garlic, heat, movement. I sat up straighter, adjusted my napkin, and told myself it didn't matter. Marley floated across the room like she was auditioning for royalty. She hugged everyone, kissed hands, tilted her head just enough to make people feel adored. Eli followed a step behind, smiling on cue, laughing when she cued it. He was always good at blending into someone else's light. They made their way from table to table, pausing for pictures, toasts, clinking glasses. When they reached the cluster of aunts and neighbors, Marley laughed loud enough for everyone to hear, then said, "Honestly, I'm just glad she didn't show up in scrubs." They all laughed. Eli chuckled too. My stomach didn't turn, it just settled lower. No one raised a glass to me. Not for raising Eli, not for flying across the country, not even for existing. I folded the corner of my napkin slowly, then unfolded it again. Marley's father stood and toasted new beginnings. Her mother added a note about strong families and lasting love. Someone cracked a joke about in-laws being the real test. Everyone laughed. I stared at my untouched water. My son scanned the room and skipped past me. Eyes met, then slid away. The photographer passed by my table without lifting the lens. I might as well have been another server waiting for a tray. The DJ called for couples to move toward the dance floor. Marley slipped her hand into Eli's. They looked every bit the polished promise, and I sat quietly by the exit, invisible to everyone except the man now walking directly toward me. The man walking toward me turned at the last moment. Just a server with more glasses of champagne. He didn't see me. None of them did. I leaned back in the chair and let my eyes blur. Not from tears, but from habit. That long stare I'd mastered in trauma bays and field tents, when the only thing you could do was wait for blood pressure to stabilize or stop. I'd spent years in that kind of stillness, inside chaos, keeping others alive. Once outside Kandahar, I ran a makeshift triage unit with nothing but gauze, grit, and a solar lamp that barely lit a room. 42 injured that night. 7 were declared gone. I brought back 2. The youngest was 19. He kept whispering his mother's name. I never told him how close he'd been to leaving her behind. I didn't ask for medals. I asked for time. I asked for Eli's future. When Eli's last tuition bill came due, I sold the vintage guitar his father left him. I never told him. He just assumed his scholarship came through. And when Marley's mother collapsed in their kitchen, I was the one who kept her breathing until the paramedics arrived. I stayed at the hospital all night, holding her hand, listening to her mutter names in her sleep. She doesn't remember. I never reminded her. I didn't need applause, just peace. But somehow, peace became invisible. Somehow, being quiet made them believe I had nothing to say, that I never was anything, that I'd simply appeared in this seat by the kitchen doors out of nowhere, carrying nothing, earning nothing. They don't know what I've chosen to forget, but I remember everything they've chosen to leave out. The song changed. Marley twirled under a canopy of lights, her dress shimmering like a celebration. Eli dipped her. She laughed, then turned and saw me watching. She didn't wave, but someone else at her table did. Someone who knew my name without needing to be told. The morning of the wedding came quietly. No calls, no knock on the door, just sunlight slipping through the hotel curtains and a silence that reminded me whose celebration it was. I dressed without rush, slacks, button down, blazer, not dresses. I'd already learned my uniform caused more discomfort than pride. I left it zipped in the garment bag and stepped out into the morning. The streets were still waking. A jogger passed, earbuds in, unaware of the weight I carried. I turned the corner and found a small cafe, brick front, wide windows, a chalkboard sign offering seasonal pastries and mimosas. I stepped inside and ordered coffee, black. The barista smiled and asked if I wanted anything sweet. I shook my head. No room for sugar today. At the corner table, I let my hands warm around the cup. Marley's voice from the night before played on repeat. She used to be a doctor or something, right? The laughter, the look on Eli's face, or rather, the absence of one. I stared down at the swirling surface of the coffee. It reminded me of late nights in cold tents, drinking instant grounds from metal mugs while praying for evac choppers to beat the sunrise. Back then, it tasted like survival. Today, it tasted like memory. They never asked how many nights I stayed awake just to keep the bleeding from stopping. They never wondered how many bones I broke holding other people together. But they remember what suits them. Marley's career path, Eli's wedding, her side of the family who got proper introductions, special chairs, speeches that sounded like legacy. Mine, erased, edited, treated like background noise in the story they were writing without me. I finished my coffee in silence. No one recognized me. No one had to. I didn't come for them. I came for the moment. Because even if they forgot who I was, one person at that wedding hadn't, and I was about to find out why he'd waited this long to speak. The reception hall shimmered with white linens and tall glass vases filled with orchids. Everyone was dressed in soft pastels like they'd coordinated a week in advance. I stood near the back wall where the light dimmed just enough to make people overlook you. Marley had the microphone again. Of course she did. She held it like it was made for her hand, chin high, shoulders square, her voice sailing across the room with the ease of someone who had never had to fight to be heard. "Even my husband's mom made it," she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "Flew in from wherever she's hiding these days." Laughter broke like a crack in glass. A few heads turned my way, then quickly turned back. She smiled wider, soaking in the reaction. "Let's all give a round of applause for the silent century in our lives." More laughter, this time warmer, more comfortable. A joke shared by insiders. I didn't flinch. I didn't look down. I didn't excuse myself. I just stood there, coffee still in my blood, memory still in my chest, and watched. Eli didn't stop her. He was standing just behind her, arm around her waist, like she was the only thing keeping him upright. He didn't look at me, not once. I thought of the hours I spent by his hospital bed when he shattered his arm in high school. I thought of the scholarship essays I stayed up editing while he slept. I thought of the groceries I mailed when their fridge broke and Marley told him not to ask. But that version of me, provider, protector, parent, didn't fit their story. Now, I was the background character in their spotlight, the quiet figure in the corner of their wedding photos they'd later crop out. Fine, let them crop. I didn't need their invitation to speak, and I didn't need a microphone when the right person already knew what I'd done. Because as Marley raised her glass and the music swelled again, her boss, standing 2 tables over, set his drink down and started walking toward me. He moved with the kind of calm that didn't ask for attention but commanded it anyway. Late 40s, pressed suit, no ring. His drink stayed on the table as he crossed the floor. I didn't know his name, but the moment he reached me, I knew he wasn't coming for small talk. He stopped 1 pace in front of me, looked me in the eye, then extended his hand. Not in greeting, but in recognition. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but steady. "You saved my brother." The room didn't quiet all at once. It happened in pieces. A fork clinked, someone coughed, a chair creaked. Then nothing. He was still holding my hand. "Carter Hensley," he added. "Afghanistan, 2010. He was losing blood fast, said a field medic kept him alive with nothing but a belt and a broken pen." I nodded once. "Corporal Hensley, shrapnel through the left side." He smiled faintly, not with amusement, but with memory. "He never forgot your name," he said. "Neither did I." From across the room, Marley froze. Her champagne flute wobbled in her hand. I watched her lips part, confused. Not scared yet, not yet. I didn't say anything. Carter turned to the room without raising his voice. "For anyone who doesn't know," he said, "this is Dr. July Aldrich, former field trauma chief. Saved more lives than this room could count, including my family's." Eli was behind Marley now, his eyes wide, his face pale. Barbara, Marley's mother, tensed in her seat, one hand gripping the armrest like it might steady the moment. I stayed still. No smile, no nod, just presence. Because when truth walks into the room clean and solid, there's nothing left to decorate. Marley stepped forward, hesitating like a child called to the front of the class. "Carter," she said, voice brittle, "I didn't realize you two." "You didn't ask," he cut in, "and you never listened." He turned back to me, gave a final nod, and walked out. No toast, no camera, no explanation. Just one sentence hanging in the air, and the sound of my name finally being heard. I didn't move right away. I let the silence carry its own weight, heavier than any insult they'd thrown all weekend. Then the whispers started. "Wait, who is she?" "She used to be in the military." "Something high up." "No, I think she was a surgeon." Someone near the band leaned in and whispered a name I hadn't heard in years. My full title. No one corrected him. The photographer, who hadn't aimed his lens at me all night, suddenly snapped 3 frames in a row. No direction, no pose. Just proof. Across the room, Marley looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Her mouth hung open, but no words came. Her hand floated midair, still holding the glass like she forgot what it was for. The liquid inside trembled with her wrist. I didn't look at Eli. I didn't need to. He wasn't coming toward me. He wasn't even moving. I turned slowly, walked past the tables, past the floral arrangements, and the ice sculpture shaped like a sailboat. Someone said my name again, softly this time, but I didn't stop. By the time I reached the exit, no one dared meet my eyes. The valet asked if I needed my car. I said no. I wanted to walk. Outside, the sky had darkened. Spring air clung to the edges of my collar. My heels echoed down the brick path like punctuation. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let the weight shift. Finally. Not off my shoulders, but off my dignity. They couldn't carry it for me, but they could no longer deny it existed. By Monday, word had spread beyond the ballroom. I didn't make a call. I didn't send a message. But I heard through someone else that Marley's pending promotion had quietly evaporated. Not because of me, because Carter Hensley had standards. He sent me a thank you card. No flowers, no drama, just one sentence handwritten in the corner. Some debts aren't paid in public. I pinned it above my desk the next morning, right before my son knocked on my door. We met in the lounge of a boutique hotel, Neutral Ground. It was the kind of place that served overpriced coffee in porcelain cups and expected you to speak in whispers. Marley showed up late, sunglasses still on, even though the sun had already dipped behind the city skyline. She slid into the seat across from me, arms crossed, waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. Slim, unlabeled, but heavy in a different way. She eyed it like it might bite her. "What is this?" I opened it halfway and turned it toward her. The first page was a printed complaint, anonymous, sent years ago to the Department of the Army, a list of vague but damaging claims, that I had exaggerated deployment details, that I hadn't earned my commendations, that my record was inflated for optics. I watched her face. At first, confusion, then something closer to recognition. The second page was the analysis. AI pattern match, 94% confidence. Language markers consistent with documents Marley had authored during grad school, including one word she always misused, irregardless. "You think I wrote this?" she said, voice almost amused. "I don't think," I said. "I know." She scoffed, then leaned back. "That's not admissible. That's not proof." I tapped the last page. "No, but it's context." Her shoulders tensed. "You didn't want to shine," I said quietly. "You wanted me buried." She opened her mouth to defend herself. I held up one hand, small, tired, firm. "I'm not here to ruin you," I said. I'm here to make sure you know that I know." She looked down, then back up, and for once her eyes didn't hold that curated calm. They looked unsettled, like someone finally being seen under full light. "You kept this all these years?" she asked. "No," I replied. "It kept me." She didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't offer it. Some truths aren't sharp. They're just steady, and they land when the noise is gone. The noise stopped when Eli rang again, this time asking to meet alone. The knock was soft, not timid, just unsure, like the hand behind it didn't know if it had the right to be there. I opened the door to find Eli standing on the porch, shoulders hunched, dress shirt wrinkled, tie loosened like an afterthought. His eyes didn't meet mine right away. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, said nothing. He took the chair across from mine, the same one his father used to sit in during quiet mornings before deployments. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. "I didn't know Carter knew you," Eli started. I nodded once. "You didn't know a lot of things." He winced. I didn't laugh," he said quickly. "When Marley made the joke, I didn't join in." "But you didn't stop her," I said, calm, not cruel. "You stood there." He sank into the chair, the weight of everything pressing down. "I didn't know what to say." "Most people don't," I replied. "But they speak anyway, and the silence becomes its own kind of voice." He rubbed his hands together. I was trying to keep things peaceful. I looked at him then, really looked. "That wasn't peace," I said. "That was compliance. You watched the woman who raised you be diminished in a room full of strangers, and you chose not to disrupt the moment." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean—" "I'm not here for meanings," I said. "I'm here for choices. And yours was silence." He stared at the floor, blinking too fast. "That silence," I continued, "that's yours to carry, not mine." He nodded slowly, ashamed. But I didn't move to comfort him. I didn't ask him to stay. Some bridges don't burn in fire. They dissolve in neglect. When he stood up to leave, I didn't stop him. He paused at the door like he might say something else, but whatever it was, he kept it. I closed the door behind him with no sound, no final word. Instead, I returned to the kitchen, poured my coffee, and opened the envelope that had arrived that morning, postmarked D.C. The hotel ballroom smelled faintly of old carpet and new coffee, an odd mix of fatigue and hope. Folding chairs lined the floor, name tags clung to shirts with quiet pride, and the podium stood ready under a modest banner, Reclaim, Medical Veterans and Memory. I didn't take the stage. That wasn't my place anymore. Instead, I stood near the exit, behind a row of support staff and early arrivals who hadn't noticed me yet. I didn't need them to, not in the old way, not for permission to matter. A young woman in a dark blazer stepped to the microphone. I didn't know her name, but I'd seen her file. Once flagged for emotional instability after treating civilian casualties in Honduras, discharged quietly, forgotten until someone on my team helped reopen her case. She cleared her throat once, then said, "Before this year, I didn't think I'd ever wear my credentials again. Now I do." She paused, voice steadying, "Because someone made sure I wasn't erased." A pause, then, "And that someone is Dr. July Aldrich." The room turned slow, unified. I felt their eyes, not like spotlights, but warmth. "She built this program when no one asked her to," the woman continued, "because she knew what it meant to be invisible. Thanks to her, hundreds now stand where they were once ignored." The crowd clapped, not thunderously, not performatively, just long enough to land. I didn't bow, I didn't wave, I just nodded once. There were no press cameras, no family in the audience, no Marley in a polished dress waiting to undermine the moment. Just veterans who had once been silenced and now stood beside each other like anchors, not to weigh down, but to hold steady. My name echoed through the room again, Dr. July Aldrich. No laughter followed it, no mockery, only space. I stepped out into the hall, past posters bearing the foundation logo and a sign-up sheet that already had 6 pages of names. Outside, the wind met me with a hush that felt like grace. I pulled my coat tighter, glanced once over my shoulder, and walked into the afternoon with nothing left to prove.